Coming up on Primetime News, the death toll from the MERS outbreak in Korea continues to rise as officials work to curb the virus's spread. The number of people under quarantine is currently nearing 4,000. Meanwhile, the outbreak has led the country's central bank to cut the key rate to a record low of 1.5% out of concerns that it might dent spending. And a battle between the U.S. activist hedge fund Elliott Associates and Korean conglomerate Samsung Group intensifies as the hedge fund files an injunction to block a merger of two major Samsung affiliates. Stay tuned for these stories and more.
It's June 11th, Thursday on a 6 p.m. in Korea here. Welcome to Primetime News. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thank you for joining us. The number of MERS cases is still on the rise. 14 new patients were confirmed today, bringing the tally to 122.
One additional death has been reported and more than 3,800 people are in quarantine. For more, we connect to our Connie Kim standing by the news center. Connie, can you take us through these new cases?
A couple of hours ago, the health ministry confirmed the 10th MERS death in Korea. It's a man in his 60s who was hospitalized in the same facility as a MERS patient. Health officials say the man who died was receiving treatment for lung cancer. 8 of the new infections came from Samsung Medical Center in southern Seoul, where 55 MERS patients picked up the virus. Most of them contracted the virus through the hospital's emergency room, but one case stands out. A woman in her 70s was in the hospital for knee surgery. She never visited the ER, so health officials are questioning how she contracted the virus. There is another transmission that's also under scrutiny. A police officer who had tested negative but is now a confirmed case. Last month, the officer met twice with a friend who had visited Saudi Arabia. After developing MERS symptoms, the officer visited a hospital in Pyeongtaek. A confirmed MERS patient had already visited that hospital as well. The officer tested positive for MERS and was transferred to Seoul Medical Center, but tested negative there and was discharged and quarantined at home. And after developing symptoms of pneumonia, the officer went to Asan Chungmu Hospital and was moved to Cheonan Dangguk University Hospital on Tuesday after his condition deteriorated. Officials there ran 2 tests to confirm that the officer is indeed positive for MERS. To recap, the patient visited a total of 4 hospitals. Health officials say it's mostly likely he contracted the virus from the first hospital, but they're looking into the possibility of an airborne transmission. Authorities are also investigating the conflicting MERS test results, which also appeared in the case of the pregnant woman at Samsung Medical Center. And in Seoul, a second hospital has closed its doors temporarily after a confirmed MERS patient visited the facility. The first hospital to close was Pyeongtaek St. Mary's Hospital, where the first MERS patient infected 36 other patients.
And Connie, what new steps has the government taken to clamp down on the spread of the virus?
Well, today officials announced plans to keep a number of hospitals free of MERS and able to serve the general public. Now, they plan to announce the details on Friday, but the strategy was created to allow the public to go to the hospital without the fear of contracting the virus, and also to ensure that suspected MERS patients will no longer be denied care. And as of now, there are 16 hospitals designated to treat MERS patients only.
Well, the general public, namely parents, have a lot of concerns about the virus. Hundreds of schools have closed down temporarily as a result. Connie, are we expecting any of the schools to reopen anytime soon?
Well, Gyeonggi Provincial Office of Education announced the province will reopen all schools in 7 areas in the region. Gyeonggi, the province, is where the first MERS case was reported last month. The Education Office's spokesperson explained the decision was made to resolve disruptions in the curriculum. The spokesperson added that the decision was not made by the WHO team that's in Seoul to assess the MERS outbreak. And just yesterday, the WHO officials had said schools should could reopen, as all MERS cases originated in hospitals, not schools. Today, more than 2,400 preschools and elementary schools were closed temporarily. Back to you.
Thanks for that report, Connie. Please keep them coming. And a bipartisan parliamentary committee tasked with tackling the MERS outbreak held its first meeting with government officials and medical experts today.
Our Kim Young-gil fills us in on what was discussed.
The special committee blasted government officials for being ill-prepared for the outbreak.
After the Ministry of Public Safety and Security was created following the Seoul ferry accident, nothing has been done to prepare for disease outbreaks, like recruiting special medical experts or buying equipment.
They also criticized the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's initial response.
Hospitals didn't share information and communicate. The Samsung Medical Center failed to quickly contain the spread of the virus, and Korea's CDC failed to work as the control tower and inform hospitals.
However, medical experts said hospitals were doing their best to contain MERS, even though the virus is new, and they're inexperienced at handling contagious diseases.
To quickly track down MERS patients, information about MERS should have been shared among hospitals. But at initial stages, we weren't aware due to the lack of experience. We're doing our best to track suspected cases and share the list with the government.
Health Ministry officials told the committee the government had deployed emergency response teams at MERS-affected hospitals to strengthen on-site inspections and prevent the spread of the virus to the general community. Officials from the Public Safety and Culture Ministry said they were working together to promote campaigns on MERS prevention and are working with the police to punish people spreading false rumors about the virus. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Although initial fears of the deadly outbreak seem to be subsiding, many of you in Korea may want to know how to avoid contracting the virus. Experts say the best way is to boost your immune system, and our Son Jung-in tells us some of the simple steps we can all take.
There is currently no cure or vaccine available for MERS. It's a fact that adds to the fear factor about the relatively unknown disease as the number of infections in Korea tick up day by day. But experts say there's no need to be too alarmed about the virus. They point to Korea's hospital environment and culture associated with patient visits as further contributors to the spread, but add that most importantly, people with strong immune systems can fully recover from MERS after cold or flu-like symptoms. So how can we boost our immunity? Doctors say big differences in temperature and stress are our immune system's worst enemies. Big temperature swings between day and night can negatively affect our condition. Studies show a person's immunity level drops 30% each time their core body temperature drops by 1 degree Celsius. Also, chronic stress suppresses the ability to fight bacterial infections. Therefore, experts advise wearing an extra layer of clothing when heading outdoors at night and exercising regularly to reduce stress. Also, consuming food rich in vitamins strengthens the body. Garlic helps the body better absorb nutrients while boosting our metabolism. Onion is high in vitamin C and antioxidants, effective for people with weak immune system. Kiwi fruit, sweet potatoes, and tomatoes are other foods that can boost our immunity. Doctors say maintaining a healthy lifestyle, including good personal hygiene, drinking plenty of water, and getting more than 8 hours sleep could protect you from catching MERS. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And in a widely anticipated move, Korea's central bank has cut its key interest rate to a new record low of 1.5%. The Bank of Korea says the MERS outbreak, damped domestic demand, and slowing exports are threatening the economy. For more, return to our Shin Se-min.
In an effort to avoid the economic troubles prompted by the MERS outbreak in Korea, the country's central bank trimmed its interest rate to 1.5% on Thursday, a record low. The rate has now fallen 1 percentage point, marking the 4th rate cut in less than a year.
The decision comes as the central bank worked preemptively to decrease the negative effects of MERS on economic sentiment.
The MERS outbreak has had wide-ranging effects on the economy. More than 85,000 foreigners have canceled trips since the outbreak began. The retail industry reported that it had been hit hard in the first week of the month by the decrease in spending by both tourists and local shoppers. On top of that, Korea's overseas shipments have been on the decline this year, dropping almost 11% on year in May, the biggest monthly drop in 6 years. This as Asia's fourth largest economy is struggling with sluggish global demand. In the middle of all this, there are concerns that the lower key rate will further stimulate the buildup of household debt, a reason one of the rate setters opposed a rate cut decision. Others, however, say that won't be an issue.
The previous rate was already low enough to increase household debt. This month's rate cut is seen as a way of stimulating spending.
Now the focus moves to the new growth forecast the central bank is set to release next month. Given current economic conditions, many predict the outlook will fall from the now 3.1 to the 2% range. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korea's rival political parties have failed to reach an agreement on whether to endorse Prime Minister nominee Hwang Ji-hye's confirmation. The opposition party is refusing to do so, but the two parties will continue talks. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
Rival party members from the Special Committee on Confirmation hearings met Thursday, but they are no closer to moving ahead with the confirmation. The ruling Saenuri Party wants the committee to endorse the nominee and move on to the final step in the confirmation process.
I hope the confirmation can be voted on at the full assembly scheduled for Friday, as the new prime minister should assume the role of overseeing the MERS control tower as soon as possible.
However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy refuses to approve his confirmation, saying the nominee is unfit for the prime minister's post.
The nominee has chosen a path of avoiding verification. He either answered unfaithfully, or said he doesn't know, or didn't submit documents.
The main opposition said Hwang's attitude at the hearing lacked sincerity, as he failed to submit about half the requested documents. They also questioned Hwang's tenure at a major law firm, which took place after he retired from some 30 years as a prosecutor and before he was named Justice Minister. They accused the nominee of possible influence peddling, which would explain the generous pay, about $1.5 million he received over 17 months. The nominee dismissed the allegations, and the ruling party said the hearing showed there are no major grounds for disqualifying him. While the NPAD clearly opposes Hwang's confirmation, the ruling Saenuri Party has hinted at the possibility of moving forward unilaterally, but for now it's still leaving room for negotiation. It urged the opposition to fully cooperate and complete the confirmation process. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Political tensions are rising as today marks the deadline for the transfer of a revised parliamentary law to the president for her signature. The controversial law allows lawmakers to demand changes to government ordinances, which the presidential office says is unconstitutional because it violates the separation of powers between the three branches of government. In a last-minute attempt at a compromise between the rival parties, the National Assembly Speaker proposed changing some of the phrasing in the law to give the government more leverage in handling the revision requests. The ruling Saenuri Party has responded positively to the proposal, while the opposition seems to disagree. Aside from the revised parliamentary law, more than 50 other bills were sent to the president this afternoon. Korea and Japan held talks today to discuss ways to address Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul's foreign ministry said senior officials from the two sides met in Tokyo on Thursday. It will be their 8th such meeting More than 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve the Japanese military during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 1900s and throughout World War II. The talks came as both countries are seeking a breakthrough in their frayed relations ahead of the 50th anniversary of the normalization of bilateral ties on June 22nd.
The fight between Korea's most powerful conglomerate Samsung Group and U.S. hedge fund Elliott Management is heating up. Elliott has filed a separate court injunction to stop what it calls an unlawful merger between Samsung C&T and the group's defector holding company, Cheil Industries. Na Young-kyung has more on this clash of the titans.
Elliott Management filed for a second injunction against Samsung C&T on Thursday after Samsung moved to sell all of its treasury stock to KCC Corporation in a bid to move forward with the merger. Elliott, which holds 7.1% of Samsung C&T's stake, is seeking to prevent what it sees as an unlawful takeover deal between Samsung Group's construction arm C&T and the group's de facto holding firm Cheil Industries. Many, including Elliott, see the merger as part of the conglomerate's plan for a generational power transfer from Chairman Lee Gun-hee, who has been in a coma for more than a year now, to heir apparent Lee Jae-yong, because the deal will allow the junior Lee to increase his control over Samsung Electronics through his existing shares in Cheil Industries. In a press release Thursday, Elliott called the treasury stock sale a desperate and unlawful attempt by Samsung C&T to shore up voting support for the merger. In response, Samsung C&T said the move is necessary to protect the company and shareholders from overseas hedge funds seeking to make short-term profits. The hedge fund believes Samsung C&T increased the proportion of merger-friendly shares by selling their treasury stocks, which wouldn't have had any voting power if in the hands of the issuer, in this case Samsung C&T, to KCC, which would vote in favor of Samsung next month. With the two companies heading for a showdown on July 17th, the date of the shareholder meeting, investors and market watchers are keeping an eye on how this battle will unfold. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
The Korean government proposed a plan for curbing greenhouse gases in the nation, a move that may help Korea climb out of the global top 10 gas emitters ranking. The joint statement released Thursday by ministries including Environment, Finance and Trade and Energy outlined 4 scenarios for the emissions target. Under the plan, the government aims to cut emissions by between 15% and 30% from current levels by 2030. The size of the reduction is expected to be finalized after a series of public hearings and submitted to the United Nations by the end of the month. It was the year 2008 when large-scale candlelit vigils took place in Korea. A mad cow disease scare prompted tens of thousands of Koreans to take to the streets and demand the government say no to U.S. beef imports. They weren't successful, though, and many Koreans have shunned American beef ever since. But according to our Han Da-eun, that attitude might be changing.
Once considered poisonous, U.S. beef is regaining its allure in Korea. America is now expected to trample Australia to become the #1 source of beef imports in Korea. The U.S. Meat Export Federation says Korea imported 2,527 tons of American beef during the first 10 days of May, edging out Australian imports. This is the first time Korea has bought more from the U.S. than Australia in 7 years, since Korea lifted the import ban on American beef in 2008. Korea had banned U.S. beef imports in 2003 after a mad cow disease was confirmed in America. The rising demand for U.S. beef comes despite its expensive cost. Between January and April, the average import price of American beef per metric ton stood at $7,988, 32% higher than the price of Australian beef. The U.S. Meat Export Federation's Korea branch says the absence of mad cow disease for several years seems to have gradually changed Korean attitudes. They also attribute the rising demand to quality.
U.S. beef boasts premium marbling. It took a while, but I think Koreans are now recognizing the fine quality of American beef. And because of the bad image it held, we put extra effort into marketing. For instance, giving out samples at large retail stores so consumers can try it out.
Another factor, the wide use of U.S. beef in high-class steakhouses and big chain restaurants. officials predict demand will increase even more when agricultural prices, which are closely linked to meat prices, stabilize in the U.S. 한다은, Arirang News.
And for the top international headlines, we connect now to our Polly at the News Center.
Our focus today, President Obama unveils his long-term strategy for Iraq. Greece inches closer to a deal on its debt crisis. And China sentences one of its top ex-security officials to life in prison.
Paul, let's start in Iraq. How is the United States planning to help turn the tide in Baghdad's favor?
Well, President Barack Obama has decided the best way is to double down on the U.S.'s current strategy to leave the fighting to the Iraqis and instead train them to better fight back against IS. On Wednesday, the White House announced that up to 450 additional American troops will be deployed to Iraq. Most of them will be tasked with building a new training base in the western Anbar province to help rebuild the fragile Iraqi forces.
The situation on the ground in Iraq would benefit from more trained Iraqi security forces and more Sunni tribal fighters that are operating under the command and control of the Iraqi central government who have received advice and assistance and equipment from the U.S. military.
The announcement comes as the Iraqi military has been ramping up operations in a bid to recapture Iraq's second largest city of Mosul after it fell to Islamic State militants 1 year ago. The radical Islamist group has so far seized control of a third of the country and its complete border with Syria in a rampage marked by mass killings and secular violence. And shifting to Europe, Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras says EU leaders have realized the need for a viable solution to his country's debt crisis that also leaves room for Greece's economy to recover. French President François Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel held talks with Tsipras on Wednesday on the sidelines of an EU summit in Brussels. Despite no signs of a breakthrough, international investors welcomed the agreement to intensify negotiations, raising hopes that a deal will soon be within reach.
The fear of a Greek exit from the Eurozone is diminishing. There is still no compromise, and the state of the negotiations are no reason to scream hooray. But there is a clear goal of the European partners to keep Greece in the Eurozone. They don't want to bear the consequences of a Greek exit from the Eurozone, which makes the markets happy.
The optimistic outlook helped to push up major markets in Europe at the start of trading on Thursday. Germany's DAX opened nearly 0.8% higher. Stocks on Wall Street also got a boost. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped to 1.3%, while both the S&P 500 and tech-heavy Nasdaq each gained about 1.2%. And finally, China's former domestic security chief Zhou Yongkang has been sentenced to life in prison after having been convicted of leaking state secrets, bribery, and abuse of power. China's state media reported that a court in Tianjin handed down the life sentence on Thursday. Zhou was also stripped of his political rights for life, and all his personal assets were confiscated by the state. According to Xinhua News Agency, the 72-year-old was found guilty during a closed-door trial last month and has chosen not to appeal. Zhou is the most senior Chinese official to be caught in a corruption scandal since the Communist Party swept into power in 1945. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Rain clouds have been dropping sporadic showers on the northern part of the country, including the capital. But the precipitation will not be enough to ease the current drought, and just about 5 to 30 millimeters of rain are expected overnight. Even so, we won't need to carry an umbrella on your morning commute. You might wake up to wet roads, but you won't need to carry an umbrella on your morning commute. The sun will come out from behind the clouds, sending the highs up close to the 30s again across the nation. So let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul will rise to 29 and there will be a big jump in temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju, with the highs getting up to 33 and 31, while Busan climbs up to 27 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other parts, it seems like Daejeon and Jeju will see a high of 32 and 29, while Dokdo tops out at 25. Now, the rain will let up tomorrow morning, but there's a chance of sudden showers on Saturday and Sunday, so we probably will not see the heat return until the end of the weekend. That's all for the weather. Good night.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Let me correct a mistake I made earlier. It's 10 p.m. Korea time is when primetime news is on. So do join us at that same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.